and welcome to Maruti's annual Nip and Tuck Clinic. And the recipient for this year's Botox treatment is the S-Cross compact SUV or compact crossover, whatever you like to call it. Now, the reason why Maruti is giving it a big facelift just 2 years after its launch, of course, is because it has been a rather slow seller in their stable, and they now want to get your imagination behind this car so that sales increase. So is it worth a second look? We'll find out on the show today. Well, so the one big addition inside this cabin now is the arrival of Android Auto on the infotainment system. Yes, the earlier car used to have Apple's CarPlay, but the new one now gets Android Auto, and that's a good thing because a lot of users will appreciate this fact. And in fact, in India, a lot of people use Android rather than Apple, so that's something that they will truly appreciate. In terms of usage, it's pretty much the same as the outgoing car and other cars in the Maruti Suzuki stable. So overall, it is as easy to use as an Apple iPad, and everything really is easy to operate and intuitive. The other good point about this car are these seats. Maruti Suzuki has given this car leather on these seats now, and you also get these prominent side bolsters, so the seat support as well as cushioning is much better than before, and especially for the lower back. And you will also appreciate the generous depth that these seats cob offers, because taller people or people with longer legs like me will appreciate the fact that these seats offer you very good under-thigh support. What you will also appreciate is the fact that this car is very good for utility places. You get one big tray ahead of the gear lever, a couple of beverage holders just next to the handbrake, and a big box over here where you can keep some chocolates as well as your cell phone right behind the handbrake. And the door bins are also pretty good at accommodating those big bottles from your home. And that's not all. The glove box has a nice and easy dampened out effect when it opens up, and is large enough to house loads of stuff inside it. And overall, as I just said, it's a nice place to be in for comfort as well as for features and utility. Well, so the boxy shape on the outside of this car means that there is loads of space here in the back seat, and as you can see, headroom is more than adequate for even someone who is my height, which for reference is 5'10". So people who are about 6'1" or 6'2" should be quite okay in these seats. And knee room also is surprisingly very good. Now, there is also place below the front seats where I can stretch my feet. So for people who prefer to be sitting in the back seat and the chauffeur taking care of driving duties, the S-Cross is pretty impressive. And these seats are also pretty accommodating for the third passenger. And why is that? Well, because the seat bench is pretty flat, so there are no odd ridges rising up over here. So whoever's sitting here will have plenty of comfort. And even though there is a bit of a lump in the floor panel, the footwells are pretty accommodating for whoever is sitting in the middle. Another plus point is the fact that you get these huge windows, which gives you very good view of the road outside, and the opening of the door also is pretty good. So the aperture of entry and exit is quite good, and because it is a tall car, you don't have to crawl into it. You can simply slide into it, and that's a good thing. And that's also a good thing, this solid third. Yes, it is a pretty solid third. And what I mean by the height of this car is that getting in and out is pretty easy. So that's a good thing for people who have older folks at home, especially parents as well as grandparents who usually like to sit in the back seat. So overall, it is a good place to be in, but Maruti Suzuki should have thought of adding rear AC vents, which are still missing, and maybe that would have made this car one of the better cars, or probably one of the best cars when it comes to rear seat comfort at this price point and in this category. While compact crossovers or compact SUVs should always have a big and usable boot, and in that department the S-Cross does not disappoint. As you can see, it's a nice and square boot, which means that you can really load in those big boxes without any problems. And I think this car's boot can actually accommodate those big luggage pieces when you're, of course, going for that airport transfer. Also, the other positive is that there is no loading lip over here. It's all flat, so you can simply just push in those bags and boxes and pull them out without any issues at all. So full marks to Maruti for giving it a very nice and usable boot. But of course, if you want to improve the luggage carrying capacity further, all you need to do is simply drop the backrest of the back seats down, and you get an almost flattish loading area, which is actually very good for shifting your home in. This car can actually do that. And you also get these small boxes in the corners where you can keep your odds and ends. So overall, very impressive in terms of luggage carrying capacity. Now, the 1.3 litre engine finally also gets the SHVS smart hybrid system from Maruti. And what this system essentially does is that it helps in fuel efficiency of this car It cuts off the engine automatically if it realizes that you have been standing at a red light for a long time, and as soon as you depress the clutch again, the engine turns on automatically. Well, Maruti Suzuki claims a fuel efficiency figure, an air tested figure of about 25 kpl plus. So in real world conditions, this car should manage to give you about 19 or 20 kpl on a very regular basis, and that's a good thing considering the size and the weight of this car. So running costs should be always under control. As soon as you start driving off the S-Cross, you will be hit by a sense of deja vu, and you'll get a feeling that you have driven this car before, because this car's driving dynamics are very similar to the Swift hatchback, and I mean that in the nicest sense of the word. This car is just as involving and just as much fun to drive as the Swift is. The steering wheel is really crisp. It's a very feel-some steering wheel, and it's always very accurate no matter what speed you're doing, slow city speeds or faster highway speeds. The steering wheel has good feedback and is very good in terms of accuracy. There is loads of grip from the tires, so if you're pushing this car into corners, the tires are always there to aid you. And overall, the chassis of this car is also very agile. It loves to change lanes very quickly, and if you push it into corners in those hilly sections, this car has minimal body roll. It's always under control, and it's very natural the way it leans into corners. There's no unnatural lean, so it always feels like you are in control of this car, and it is a package which is fun to drive. Well, the 1.3 litre engine on the Maruti Suzuki S-Cross is the same one which also does duty on a host of other cars, and the only issue on this engine is that below 2000 rpm it's really lazy and hesitant to respond to your throttle inputs. It's just as lazy as a 4 or 5 year old kid at home is in the morning, and just like a 4 and 5 year old kid, you have to really shake it up to wake it up. So after 2000 rpm, this engine really does get going. There's waves of torque coming in, and that torque comes in all the way till 4500 rpm, which is of course the red line for this engine, and after that there's no usable torque coming in, so it's better to back off. So yes, between 2 and 4000 rpm is the best place to keep this engine, and refinement levels are pretty okay. The cabin isolation is pretty good from whatever's happening on the outside, but of course when you rev it hard, you do tend to hear a little bit of that engine noise entering the cabin, but that's quite okay. It is within acceptable limits. Now remember, this 1.3 litre unit has been around for quite a while. What you'll also appreciate is the overall ride quality of the S-Cross. Yes, the ride quality on this car is phenomenal, especially when you are out on the open highway. This car displays a very stable and a very mature ride, and it has a very flat ride. So what do I mean by a flat ride? Well, essentially, if you are on the highway doing speeds of about 90 or 100 kph, this car's suspension will completely soak in all the bumps. There's hardly anything which will enter the cabin. So it's a great car for traveling from Delhi to Chandigarh or doing that Mumbai-Pune trip. If you are someone who does those trips regularly, this is a good car. And also because it has a long wheelbase, that long wheelbase also does help absorb the bumps quite well. Even in the city, at slow city speeds, you can completely glide over those rumble strips and those bumpy patches of road. This car really does do a very good job at smothering all those badly patched up roads with complete aplomb. Now in terms of gearbox usage, we've always found Maruti Suzuki gearboxes to be nice and crisp, and it's no different with the new S-Cross. The clutch also is really very light. In fact, it feels like you are driving a petrol car. The clutch action is also very linear, and it is a light clutch, so if you are someone who drives in the city, you should be quite okay. That, along with the fact that the steering wheel is pretty light, it's not a very heavy steering wheel, means that driving this car in the city is quite a nice and easy affair. Now there is a lot of feedback from the steering wheel, but Maruti have managed that without making it a very heavy steering wheel, so that's something which is a job well done by Maruti Suzuki engineers. Also, you'll like the fact that visibility is very good all across. You do get this chunky pillar, but there is of course a quarter glass window over here, so you can look around it quite nicely. Visibility from the back is good, and overall visibility really is excellent. You also get these nicely perched up seats, so you get a good view of the road ahead, and you can actually see 3 or 4 cars down the road and figure out how long this traffic jam is and how long you'll be stuck in it. Well, if you are someone who also drives a lot on the highway, you'll appreciate the fact that Maruti Suzuki has given disc brakes all around the S-Cross, and that's something that you'll appreciate quite a lot if you drive on the highway a lot, because the brakes have very good bite, and as soon as you hit that brake pedal, this car does drop the anchor down very fast. Well, most people will appreciate this engine, gearbox, steering wheel as well as the clutch, because that makes this car a nice car for city usage, and because it is adequately powered, this car is also good enough for the highway than before, and also feels like a very well-built car inside over here. And so overall, how has my experience been with the S-Cross and driving it around for the full day? I have to say that I'm very impressed with the overall driving dynamics of this car. You really have to drive it to figure out what a good car it is. It's definitely a little ahead of its other brother, the Vitara Brezza. So if you are in the market for a Maruti compact crossover and don't really want to go with the Vitara Brezza because everybody else has that car, and you still want a Maruti, then you should definitely try the S-Cross. It is a car which has a premium feel to the cabin, just like the Vitara Brezza, and it also drives a lot better than the Vitara Brezza. It feels a lot more involving, and in fact it feels a lot more involving than a lot of other compact crossovers, a lot of other compact SUVs out there in the market. Well, in the Maruti universe, it's always been easy to overlook this car because Maruti already has the Vitara Brezza. But with the arrival of the new S-Cross, you get a spacious cabin, a big boot, loads of features, and also a car which is very good to drive. And also remember that this car now gets SHVH technology, which means that better fuel efficiency is going to aid your running costs by quite a fair bit. So overall, this is definitely a car that is worth a second look at next dealership near you. And if you are someone who wants to buy a compact crossover for everyday city driving, then this is one of the better cars for keen drivers out there. It's bye for now and hope to see you soon.